This is the lesson 3 video notes on mash multiplication. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to look through the previous page lessons and notes. We're going to get into mashing real quick. Before we do that, we're going to start out with some basic multiplication rules, which most of you guys are very aware of. We're all very aware of this concept. If there's one negative, we know it's going to be a negative, and of course a negative times a negative gives us a positive. But what we're going to do next is make sure we take care of signs from multiple signs. So I'm going to ask you guys real quickly to take a look at this question right here. What is the sign of this question going to be? We know it's 1 times 1 times 1, so it's going to be 1. But the question is, what's the sign? You guys can hit pause and discuss this, and then press play when you're ready to go. Okay, so if you haven't figured it out, which I'm sure you have, the answer ends up being positive. The real question is why? And what it comes down to is this. Every 2 negatives creates that plus sign. So here we go. 1, 2 more, plus, 2 more, plus. So when it comes down to it, any two negatives creates a positive, and in this case, there's an even number of negatives, so the whole thing is positive. So the y is even number of negatives, and remember we're calling minuses, negatives, any of those signs, no matter what you call them, is going to be equal to a positive answer. This brings us, of course, to the next question. So take a peek at this, look at it, and see what you think the sign is going to be. Again, you can hit pause, discuss it, and then come back. Okay, and obviously this one, the answer is negative. And again, it comes down to the same concept. Every 2 negatives creates a positive. So 1, 2, 1, 2. And then finally, we get to this last remaining negative, which makes the whole thing negative. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and then 1 remaining negative sign makes the whole thing negative. So the answer is odd number of negatives always gives you a negative answer. So let's get into some mashing. So the bottom line is this. We're going to multiply this whole group, and again we use the word mash to remind you that it's one big giant pile. But the key to math is to get the signs without having to type it in the calculator. So when we talk about example 1 right here, we're going to look at this problem and locate all the negative signs. Obviously there's 2 of them. Now we already know any 2 negative signs creates a positive. So we know that this is going to be a positive answer. From there we go to our calculator or in your head. But basically we're just going to punch in the numbers only, not the signs. We've already done the signs. So 4 times 5 times 6 times 2, which gives me 240. And then of course the famous just chuck in the peas, the carrots, and the gravy, and that is how you mash. So literally, signs first in your head, numbers next, one pile in your calculator, chuck in the peas and the carrots. Okay? Example 2. Count the number of negative signs. Now remember, you can call it negative or minus or subtract. In algebra, it's the same thing. So here we have 1, 2, 3 negatives, which is going to make the whole thing negative, because we know odd number of negatives makes it negative. Done with signs. Now we take our numbers, the 5 times the 6 times the 2, which gives us 60. And again, throw in the peas, carrots, and the gravy. And that is how you mash. Don't overthink it. Just mash. Signs in your head, numbers on the calculator, throw in the peas and the gravy. You are now officially ready to mash.